Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming along. Before we start, I wanted to point out that I'm not in any way an engineer or have any experience of the building trades, architects or whatever. This is my first real kind of project. My background was in adventure travel, which came to an end following an accident at work. And so this is just my journey of gaining knowledge and a sprinkling of understanding, largely guided by what I've picked up through open homes and just through my own investigations. And it's not, oh, there we go. So I moved back to my family home in October 2016, being unable to run a household myself. The idea was that by living with my mum, we could look after each other, sharing the difficult tasks and largely try not to kill each other. Me by poisoning mum with my cooking and mum killing me with kindness. My disability makes travel difficult. So I need a car, but I don't do many miles. But that made me a perfect candidate for being an early EV adopter with a car at the time that could only do about 60 miles. At that time, the second-hand price of EVs was at bargain basement levels due to the general misunderstanding or distrust of battery technology. In 2016 or 17, I found out about eco homes, which was a fantastic source of knowledge. Moving back to my family home, I knew that for it to work for me and for me to be able to care more for mum as she aged, that some layout changes would have to take place. As a family, we've always been eco-conscious, so that was always in my mind. And when I found open eco homes, I really felt that I'd struck gold. They're a mine of information and giving you the opportunity to visit homes and gain from those experiences and the experiences of the people that have gone through with the changes. It's just invaluable. When I moved back, it was my mum's home that she lived in for 50 years. And she was very happy with the way things were. Thank you very much. She was then in her mid-70s, now in her 80s. So I had to be very considerate of that position. So in order to convince her of the benefits and possibilities, I knew that I needed to get architects on board. I had a builder's friend that I knew, grew up with and went to school with. And between us, we could have put something together, but the architects brought a lot of knowledge and experience to the table, making it a worthwhile investment and really helping to get my mum on board with the project. Having become an early convert to electric vehicles, when I heard about a vehicle to grid trial, it just made complete sense to me, as they're pretty much just batteries on wheels. And my usage of the EV being mostly in electricity off peak times. So it would be on my driveway and able to export during the peak times. It was really a no-brainer. By 2020, the plans are pretty finalised and the main eco and energy efficiency measures are decided upon. Then the world imploded with COVID. But having already planned the eco and energy efficiency measures, I was able to make use of the Green Homes grant before it ended in 2021 in getting my pitched roof insulated with spray foam. Having gone through the planning stages, I knew that it could be done independently of any of the other measures. So it was great to have that knowledge in place and knowing what I could move on and what I really couldn't. And equally, again, when the Solar Together group put a group purchasing leaflet through the door, again, I knew I could proceed with that. And with Solar Together, I reckon I got close to a 50% discount on the standard prices for solar. And again, December 2021, when the government announced the end of the renewable heat incentive, I decided to push for an install before that scheme ended, as replacement schemes generally are never as good. At that time, the boiler upgrade scheme had not yet been announced. But it turned out I was right. The next scheme wasn't quite as good. But pushing for an early install when there were supply chain issues with all of the COVID issues COVID problems, wasn't such a great idea. And at that time, my knowledge of heat pumps wasn't great. Then, end of the lockdown, cometh the man, this time my builder buddy, saying that he was available to start on the project. And it was just absolutely perfect timing, being the kind of end of spring, start of summer, just the perfect time of year. We couldn't have asked for a better kind of gift. And 5 months into the project now, I think he's pretty much still a buddy, thanks to him making a lot of allowances almost daily and very much tolerating myself and my mum. 5 months might sound like quite a long time, but we did encounter a lot of problems upstairs, and he's only been working 4 days a week with a minimal crew, which has really been just the right pace for mum to cope with the changes that are taking place, and a house not being overrun with builders, because we decided, well, I decided that moving out would not be the best option for her. It would be harder for her to cope with everything going on if she was away from her house, and especially away from her garden. So there are 3 main aims or main objectives to my project, which I'll describe in more detail with a section of the talk on each of them. The first one being considered quality of living design, being eco-friendly and energy efficient. So the property itself, it was built in 1968, although this picture was taken in the 90s after all. And by the 90s, all 3 properties had built front extensions. They were originally mostly dull, flat-fronted houses when they were built. There's the rear of the property, again in the 90s, and a little bit later on with a lovely mature garden. You might understand now my mum was a bit reluctant to leave it and seeing it destroyed. So property, standard brick and block build with 50mm cavities, and you can just see in the cavity between the walls some of the blown fibre insulation that went into the cavity walls about 10 years ago. The original layout, or the existing layout now with the front extension, designed as a starter family home with 2 double bedrooms, 2 single bedrooms, and a kitchen with the obligatory serving hatch through to the living/dining area. My parents added the front extension in the 70s to add a downstairs toilet, dining room, and creating a double length garage that you can't even drive a small family car into these days. Of note is the passageway here on the right of the ground floor, because that's our only access through to the back garden. So changing the layout I had to take into some considerations for mum, as elements of the living room downstairs and definitely her bedroom upstairs needed to remain unchanged to keep an element of familiarity, grounding her and really keeping alive the links to the building that she's spent her life in and raised a family in. So downstairs, the passageway through from the front to the rear gardens, that had to stay, the living room area, and keeping a front part of the garage for storage, and then upstairs, her bedroom. So for the changes, the front door was moved to the front of the property, which seemed like a smart idea. I've extended the kitchen slightly. The dining and the garage were combined to create a new social area for myself, and we expanded the downstairs toilet to become a downstairs bathroom, and with an area of the new social area for me that could be used as a downstairs bedroom with a view out into the garden, should either of us become unable to use the stairs. Upstairs, we combined the 2 single bedrooms into a double bedroom, and I borrowed some of that space for the bedroom to the right, as the wardrobe in that room was used to house the air source heat pumps, internal gubbins, and the water cylinder. The bathroom has been pretty much doubled in size by knocking through what was a laundry cupboard and a separate shower room. So that's been quite a major change to the bathroom that we've had there. The first project aim, considered quality of living design, might sound impressive, but it's a phrase I composed with the help of a thesaurus. Then the following day, saw it in a magazine and realised that I'd probably seen it before somewhere, so I can't take any credit for that. Basically, what I was trying to get with the phrase is that making the house easier and safer for us to live in, taking in some elements of universal living, which is making it full wheelchair access. We can't do that, but we've kind of kept wheelchair access in mind, and also dementia awareness, which includes recommendations such as keeping recognisable features of the house and belongings, pronounced skirting boards, so you can easily see where the wall and the floor join, and trying to avoid any changes from light to dark flooring, say with a very dark doormat on a light floor, because that can, to somebody with dementia, it can appear as a hole and can be quite frightening for them. Also with the front door, making it same level access and providing a bench or shelf inside and outside the front door for putting bags down on, and creating a covered porch area so you don't get soaked while searching for a key, a toilet within easy reach of the front door, and certain elements of the house can, I'm kind of making automated, such as door unlocking and lights turning on automatically. But it was important that there were good old-fashioned physical keyholes and light switches available for mum to use, which is why I've opted to use light wave switches for a few of the switches downstairs, so that I can incorporate some of my ideas. Making the property easy to clean by design of how I set everything out, and also by installing a water softener to prevent limescale. An assisted bathroom, but again, we don't have the space for fully disabled features, but making it assisted to avoid later eyesore additions of those white plastic grab rails that are an unpleasant reminder that you're getting old or are disabled. So by incorporating that in, it keeps it looking much more kind of pleasant. Broken plan living with soundproofing. So some areas can be shut off by folding and sliding doors, and using soft materials to dampen sound as well. Okay, air quality, ventilation, and lower VOCs from using volatile organic compounds. They have less if you use natural products. Comfortable environment. As we both spend the majority of the day at home, an air source heat pump by design creates a comfortable environment by running all day, instead of gas heating that only comes on twice a day. Now, most people would think that external wall insulation is to insulate in the winter, but it also does the same job in the summer, providing cooler shelter from the oppressive heat we've been and will continue to experience. And perhaps the best way to sum this up is to show you all a video of the not quite finished bathroom. And hopefully I can get this to run. So there's a pocket door to create my room with an easy to use lock, which was quite hard to find. Our washing machine has been temporarily plumbed into where, hopefully for health benefits, we can put an infrared sauna if there's some money left over in the budget.
Well, we seem to have lost the
video.
video.
Because it's lost the video. Okay. So the corner section by the waste pipe that's coming up, is an area that's going to be boxed off and will house the extract unit for all of the wet rooms. There's coming up a sink without a ridge so that it's easy to put things down, an ergonomic tap so that it's comfortable to use and easy to clean behind, which isn't a feature of our previous sinks. The floor is marmoleum, which is waterproof, comfortable, soft and warm. There's a grab rail cunningly disguised as a towel rail. The walls are covered in mermaid boards, which are easy to clean and have no grubby grout. Again, an ergonomic tack without any prongs sticking out and situated so that you can turn the shower on without getting wet and getting that blast of cold water. And this is the 75% water saving shower head. It creates a drenching warm mist of water. So it's like a waterfall or rainforest shower, but without the associated environmental and financial costs. And as air source heat pumps aren't great as towel warmers, we also have an infrared heated towel rail, which got switched on or joined up to the electric circuit yesterday. So we've now got a warmer bathroom in the mornings.
I don't think we can see that.
No, that's fine. Video has come to an end. Yeah.
Right.
It's the white panel, very bland at the moment. So on to the next slide. Yep. So the second project aim was to be as eco-friendly as possible within our budget. What you may notice is that there are some elements of each aim that could be in any one of them. My original idea was not to extend at all, but we hadn't considered that our neighbours might want to build a 2-storey wraparound extension to the side and back, cutting off some of our light. So back to the drawing board and a bit more money on architects. And this is when I got AC Architects on board. Using natural materials where possible, like cork and clay, and EWI, there stands for external wall insulation, which I'll go into more detail on the third project aim. Reuse of materials are double glazed windows, which were only installed about 6 years ago. We've been able to refit them into the external wall insulation by properly draft proofing and insulating them, making them perform much more efficiently than through an ordinary standard fitting. And a green roof, more on that in a moment. And we couldn't afford to implement rainwater harvesting for a grey water system to feed the toilets and washing machine. But as the house is in bits now, we can at least put in the pipework so that if the funds ever do come up, we can get that plumbed in. Water saving showers and taps. And, going back, 10th of October, we are cutting off the methane, the so-called natural gas. That's going to be a very memorable day for me. Another eco-friendly thing, we're putting LED lighting throughout. Now, with any eco or green measures, they will generally cost you more. So we had to compromise to keep within our budget. When you compromise, if what you choose instead doesn't match your ideals and values, then you're never going to be happy with it. It's just going to be a constant nagging reminder. And so always stick to your ideals and values. And it's a rule that you can apply to your job as well, I hear. So here, as with this example, clay plaster, it's only twice the price of gypsum plaster, but the shipping costs are just make it well out of our reach. So we opted for clay paint instead. So it has the same properties, but just in a much thinner layer. Another compromise was the green roof. There are a number of different types of green roof. The one which replicates a ground level garden will obviously need a lot of structural support to be put in. So we chose to go with a cheaper sedum carpet, which also has the minimal maintenance to go with it. So now, stopping for some Q&A, I can have a drink of water. Right.
Right. If you've got questions, put them in the chat. We've got some in the chat already. Anne, do you want to ask your question if you want to unmute?
Hi, Paul. I think it's absolutely
Hello.
brilliant. Hiya. You had the photograph of the cavity wall insulation, or rather the cavity, I think, but with no insulation in it apart from the odd little sort of wisp. So I was puzzled. Yeah, how did you get in there? How did you see it? How did you take the insulation out? Did you take the insulation out?
Yes, this is the gremlins that we met upstairs in the property. Our neighbours had subsidence about 40 years ago, and this is the first time, because we were taking down internal walls to combine the bedrooms. This is the first time the plaster had come down, so we found that our internal walls had moved between 5 to 10 centimetres, cracks everywhere. So the builder had to take down and rebuild lots of the walls, put in strengthening, and in the 2 single bedrooms when they were combined together, we took out the 2 single windows and we brought the window that was our dining room window downstairs and put that in upstairs at the back of the house for the new double room. So that's why kind of we got to see all of that. And the builder, so he took out a fair amount of the insulation and is replacing it with newer or better insulation as appropriate. But yeah, that's why the picture of all of that wall structure. And there were all the usual suspects in there, you know, half bricks and, you know, an old sandwich, that kind of thing from, but yeah, all the usual things.
Yeah. Wow, and 5 to 10 centimeters of movement. That is really scary.
Yes, the structural surveyors that we got in were actually turned out to be the same structural surveyors that had come along 40 years ago, the same company. They were quite happy that it was all historical, but because we could see that the floor joists for the first floor, they'd moved quite a significant amount, so they needed to be, instead of just sitting on the wall, they needed to be secured to it. And yeah, so quite a few gremlins, and that's left the house without a single 90-degree element in it. So when the builder came along to try and fit a bathroom with a shower tray, glass wall and shower panels, all with 90-degree angles, absolute nightmare for him. The swearing, yeah, quite a bit of it, but he's done a fantastic job, has to be said.
Okay, we've got another quick question probably from Chan here. Could you share where you found that lock on the pocket door? He says he wants to find something similar.
Oh, I found it on a version of it, I think on eBay, and then went searching, deep diving onto the internet and found it. I can dig out a link and provide it at some point to you, Nicola, or then that can be passed on. But
and we can probably send that out when we send out the chat then, yeah? Okay.
Exactly, yep.
And I have a question, which is, what is marmoleum?
Marmoleum, it's a kind of a version of linoleum, but I think it's made with linseed oil, and it's about one of the most natural floor coverings that you can get, other than cork, which is featuring in a lot of the rest of the house. Marmoleum, it's available in click tiles and in sheet form. It's very much like a lino, but with all of the green benefits to it.
And Tom has just put a link into the chat. Thank you very much, Tom. I think that's all for now. So shall we continue on? There'll be plenty of time for more questions at the end.
Okay. Bear with me whilst I try and get screen sharing going again. Share. Let's get back to, okay. So moving on to energy efficiency, the third and funnest of the project aims, where those who've been disappointed so far by a distinct lack of will be rewarded with some graphs. The main thing that I've learned from Open Eco Homes is that the two main considerations when altering your building are insulation and ventilation. Get these wrong and you can damage the fabric of your building. They're so important. They should be underlined in bold and in a red font color. So external wall insulation. I chose cork for the rear of the property because of its many properties, not least that it's a natural product and reusable. And I really like the look of it as well. It's available in a range of looks. The plain flat surface is what I like best. And it does retain that kind of natural color. Mostly there's a little bit of fading over the years, but not a drastic amount. And as well as the flat front, it's also available in a number of different patterns that they can cut into it as well. For the front of the house, wood fibre board, again, a very eco-friendly natural product covered with larch cladding, as I thought the planning department might struggle a bit with having cork on the front of the house as well. And again, I'm compromising here by going with Scottish larch as opposed to Siberian. It's generally considered not quite as good a quality. It's got more knots in it, but not add character, and it's got the same properties as the Siberian, but Siberian is generally ranked as a better and longer lasting, and but you're paying the price for that. So as I mentioned before, we're pulling the windows out to fit them into this new external wall insulation layer, as that will give them the best energy efficiency. The glazer that fitted them originally has come back and worked out a system with my builder that he was happy with, so that we could still keep the fencer certification valid. And there's also, there's also a fantastic insulating building material called compact foam, which I know that some other of the Open Eco Homes hosts have used on their projects. You can actually incorporate it into the structural support for the windows, but well, it is expensive. So we went for these brackets, which are going to be, and also going with air and water membranes and the external wall insulation, which will be very, very tightly fitted to create the best layer that we can. Pitched roof insulation, which I got through the Green Homes grant. Spray foam can be contentious, mostly due to the incorrect use of it creating severe damp issues. It can come in an open cell and a closed cell format. Closed cell creates a water barrier, so it can be kind of useful underground, and the open cell is a breathable format. Mortgage providers don't like it because you can't see the health of the building fabric behind it, but you could say that the same goes for plaster and other insulation layers, and a quick lick of paint can hide many problems. So we got it through the Green Homes grant, and so the government paid for it, but when it came time for having an energy performance certificate done, the chap doing that said that there isn't a box to tick for it, so it's not being calculated into your EPC. So even though the government was willing to pay for it, they can't account for it. But getting it through the grant probably explains why the quality of the install does leave a lot to be desired. There are kind of gaps in there, so it's not a consistent layer. It could have been applied a lot better, but it's up in the loft, and it's difficult for either of us to get up there and kind of check out the job that was done. But with sensors up in the loft space, it's shown that the humidity and temperature has remained relatively constant. In July 2021, we had a heat wave, and that accounts for the spike in the temperature here. This year, when we had the solar panels providing the roof with shade, it was much cooler, but the sensors weren't in place due to the building work. In the colder month of January of this year, the levels remained more constant, even though at the time our then shower room was expelling the warm, moist air directly into the loft cavity. So there were daily mini spikes, but overall, as you can see here, the open cell spray foam has worked, and it's keeping it at a very good level of humidity, quite often lower than the rest of the house. With the spray foam, when it came to insulating the newly configured bathroom area, we had to create a junction between the warm roof that we'd created of the loft space and the cold roof of the bathroom, which has the skeeling, which is the slant, where the roof becomes part of the ceiling of the room. So warm and cold roofs. So we had the architect and the builder came up with the system to allow for combining the two and allowing for ventilation of the cold roof. The ventilation, the other main aspect of the insulation and ventilation that Open Eco Homes advise. Mechanical ventilation with heat recovery is by far the best option, and I would have had it if I could, but it's costly and requires ducting to most rooms, which is really quite invasive. And so luckily, Open Eco Homes produced a video last year or in a recent year about an Air Eco product for mechanical extract ventilation or demand control ventilation. And that is linked on the online case study of my notes, and Nicola possibly has a link that she'll put into the chat as well. So I'm going to save time and not talk about the Air Eco product. So please take a look at that video. So there's just a few pictures that I'd prepared for it of all the bits you get. So with solar, photovoltaic solar panels, I went through the Solar Together scheme, which was a very good option for bulk buying as a group, where you get the good discounts. And they also allowed you to purchase batteries at the same time. And if anyone is thinking of installing solar, I always emphasize that you get your money back through storing the electricity and using it yourself, generally not through exporting. And as we move to more time of use tariffs, this becomes ever more important and effective at reducing our energy bills. Now, as I already had a battery on wheels, I didn't consider that getting a battery was essential for my project. And with the production of solar, of course, you get more energy in the summer when you're using less. And then in the winter, December of 2021, I barely produced enough to fill my car battery, unfortunately. So, air source heat pump. Our combi boiler was in good working condition and didn't necessarily need replacing, but because of the work we were doing ripping the house apart, it really made sense to install one now rather than wait a few years till the combi boiler broke, and the laws, which by then may have changed, so you can't then reinstall one, and at that point have to rip our house apart again. So yeah, I do apologize for the notes up on screen at this point, just me trying to be humorous. I can see one face laughing, so I shall move on now. So with an air source heat pump, you get a big ugly box with a fan and compressor. So you're swapping one form of pollution for another. Though most compressors do operate below 50 decibels, so you can have a normal conversation when you're standing next to one. It's not that much of an issue. You need an area outside to put your great big box. If it's at the front of the property, you might need planning permission. And the heat pump needs a power supply feed from the fuse box and consumer units, and an entry point for the pipes near where the internal gubbins will be installed internally. The pipes you can see going up the side of the house here, they were then insulated, but they will eventually be covered by our external wall insulation as well. So the pipes coming in through in between the floors and feeding through, in this case, my bedroom, and they weren't insulated, which will, I think, become a required standard. But this meant that my bedroom had underfloor heating as well as a radiator, which doesn't make it so comfortable for me because I do prefer a colder bedroom. This is the wardrobe in my bedroom that I sacrificed, knowing that in hopefully months or years, I would be taking space from the adjoining single bedroom to create myself a new larger wardrobe. So having that, knowing those plans, I was able to go ahead confidently with the installation. And I wanted to keep everything out of the bathroom. I could have used the linen cupboard maybe, but that would have, I wanted to create more space in the bathroom. So taking this wardrobe seemed like a very good idea.
Sorry, Paul, what is that white tank thing?
White thing?
Yeah.
Is a Mixergy tank.
Ah.
Hold your horses, it's coming up. So Mixergy tanks, I first heard about these on the YouTube channel Fully Charged, and they are brilliant. They can heat from a variety of sources, from your solar PV that's diverted, from mains electric or gas, and from a heat pump, and you can choose primary and secondary sources of it as well. And it heats the water from the top. So apart from when it's doing it from the heat pump, when it's doing it from the heat pump, it needs to heat the whole tank, but any other source, it can heat from the top. And the physics of water mean that there's a natural layer between the hot and the cold water, so it's not cooling down as much, and there are smart features incorporated into it, so you're only heating as much as you regularly use. You can override that if you've got someone staying. You can say, okay, I want to increase the level of water in the tank. There's a little display here which shows that tank there is about 80–90% full at the time, and you can kind of manually override, but it automatically assesses how much you regularly use, and it can link up to time of use tariffs such as the Octopus Agile. So if there is a time when energy is a lot cheaper, it might take use of that and fill up the hot water cylinder fully, so you're getting your hot water at the cheapest possible price. Now, one of my glamorous assistants should be providing a link in the chat to these information sources I'm now going to mention. The Fully Charged show, which is where I heard about this Mixergy tank. Oh, and the Mixergy, I'm going to get my teeth back in. The Mixergy tank, it was the first install of it that my air source heat pump installers had ever done. So they are quite kind of new to the market. So Fully Charged show with Robert Llewellyn, who some of you may remember as Crichton from Red Dwarf. He started a channel about EVs a few years ago, and it now covers a whole host of topics, notably the home series here at the bottom. You go to the page, scroll down a bit, and this home energy series comes up, which is really quite informative. Another good source of information about heating is the Heat Geek channel. Everything you need to know about heat pumps and more. So if you're still running a gas boiler, there are videos about how to maximize your heating efficiency, and which can give you an indication of how viable your house is for running a heat pump. So those are two sources of information that it's good fun to watch those. So with the heat pump, this graph shows last December when it was installed on the second week of December, and it was actually turned on on the 14th of December. The green is showing my electricity kilowatt hours used per day. The grey is for gas. The blue line is the outside temperature minimum, and the red line shows the outside temperature maximum for that day. So you can see here on the 7th of December, the temperature goes down to 0 degrees. And on that day, the gas requirement is 100 kilowatt hours for keeping the house warm. But then on the 22nd of December, after the heat pump's been turned on, the temperature again goes down to 0 degrees, but the increase in electricity used does not, it shows the efficiency of the heat pumps. So they normally run, you put 1 kilowatt of energy in, and you can get 3 kilowatts of energy, heat energy out. So they're very efficient. And that graph kind of goes to show that. Now, there is some invalidity in the graph because of the solar panels and the vehicle to grid, but which is why I'm showing December, because there's very little solar power generated during that day. And with the export from the vehicle to grid, which you'll hear about a little bit later on, the maximum is 17 kilowatts per day, and that's over roughly about 6-7 hours. So it's not going to be all of that 17 kilowatts. It would just be 1 or 2 kilowatts kind of per hour that it's running. So yes, the graph is kind of invalid to a certain extent, but it does show you the efficiency of the heat pump. So now we're on to the really exciting stuff, as there's so much potential to these concepts.
Are we nearly done, Paul? Because it's 1:45.
Okay, I will speed it up. Sorry.
No, I mean, another 3 or 4 minutes is fine.
Okay. So the idea of vehicle to grid is that you're helping to balance the national grid by storing power in your EV when there's low demand on the grid, and then feeding it back into the grid during peak demand. And it's the national grid and your energy company that are in control of these import and export times. So there's very little that you actually need to do. You can take over control of the vehicle. You can set what time you want to, if you normally go out to work, you can set a minimum charge and a time of departure every day. So your vehicle will have enough battery charge for you, and it restricts the discharge on the battery. It won't export down below 25%, and it won't fill up the battery higher than 90 to 95%, and that keeps the battery healthy. So energy bills. This was the year before I started the vehicle to grid trial, and I had an electric vehicle, but I didn't have solar photovoltaic panels, and this is the electricity and gas combined. So total for that year, August to July, 1,372, 13 pence kilowatt with a 20 pence per day standing charge. Moving on to 2020 to 21, that's a year on the trial, but I don't have any solar. The total has gone down to 927, and the pence per kilowatt and daily standing charges have gone up. So it's indicating that I'm saving money, a fair bit of money, through the vehicle to grid trial at that point. Then we move on to 2021 to 22, and this is when I've got the solar panels installed. And during that 12 months, the energy company paid me £459. That's a negative energy bill, which, considering the crisis we're going through at the moment, I consider myself extremely lucky. Now, I've had a great time doing loads of media for OVO and for the other companies involved, getting myself in the Sunday Times and Bloomberg, but they haven't given us any guarantees on what's going to be happening post December of this year. So because of the energy crisis and the unsure position that everybody's in, I chose to move over to a new trial, which is vehicle to home, where instead of the energy company or the national grid having control, the user has control of the energy. And the idea is that you fill your battery up from solar, or if there's not enough solar, you can top it up from an overnight rate, and then you run your house for the rest of the day using that much cheaper electricity, avoiding the peak rates of the day. Can't tell you much about it because I've only been on this trial for a few weeks. The trial itself starts in a few months' time. It's still open for applications this month. Right, air source heat pump problems. We'd chosen it early installation to take advantage of the heat incentive, but this led to us receiving a 9 kilowatt heat pump, which is at least 2 kilowatts oversized, and following the external wall insulation and the other measures, it's going to be grossly oversized. The information is, do not oversize your heat pump. This is going to create a few problems for us. The primary pipes to and from the heat pump weren't lagged. As I mentioned, this is hopefully become a standard, but it's led to my room being overheated, which I'm hoping to combat with the changes that we're making and changing the radiators. And we were provided with a Hive thermostat. Some of the offers you want, don't accept it, because they are just on-off switches. They're a lot of money. They might look nice, but they are really quite useless. To conclude, retrofitting for the aged, the time of year is crucial because they're more affected by heat and cold, and the question of whether to live in or out, as I mentioned, it'd have been worse for my mum living out and being away from the garden. And the stress, both physical and emotional, can have a lasting effect on health. Take it slow but steady. We're now 5 months in. We've got a few more months to go, but a slower pace is much better for just acceptance. On balance, my retrofit will be beneficial, but almost on a daily basis, I'm questioning the aggro that I'm putting my mum through to get us to that point. But fingers crossed, it'll be worth it. When should you retrofit? Our aim was to create a better quality of living for us, so the time is now. If you're doing it for ecological reasons, then it was 10 or more years ago to make the changes. If you're thinking about it for economic reasons, you can still make savings now, but if you're waiting for grants or the government to take the lead, yeah, good luck. What benefits have we seen so far? Little, because we're really still in the middle of the retrofit. But if the rest of the retrofit realizes the intended benefits as we've got from the bathroom, the benefits will be immense. So my 3 tips, as mentioned on the handout: educate yourself. Retrofit remains still a niche area, and the suppliers and trades are not really ready for it. The tradespeople I've met have been really keen on using the new products and new techniques, but because they normally don't get the chance to do it. So they're keen, and you can work on that, but generally the industry as a whole isn't ready. So plan, again, work out what you can do as a standalone improvement so you can take advantage of any grants or deals if they become available. And again, to repeat, stand firm to your values and ideals. That is the path to contentment. Here endeth.
Thank you very much, Paul. That was really interesting.
Thank you.
We've got a few minutes left, but and possibly not enough for questions, but we're happy to stay on a little bit longer if you are. So if you want to hang on to get your questions in. What is the most important?
I do apologise for overrunning.
That's fine. I think probably the most interesting question is from Anne again about the uninsulated pipes. Do you want to ask that one? And
yeah, I was just worrying that the uninsulated pipes will be a real problem in a heat wave, because my mum had uninsulated pipes under her sheltered housing flat, and it was a right pain. We did thermal imaging to track them down.
Right, during the heat wave, the the heating won't be on.
But what about hot water?
Hot water is, in the summer, I turn off the air source heat pump, and because of the Mixergy cylinder, I run that off solar during the summer months. So
Great.
that's how I've avoided that issue. Yeah.
Yeah. No, great idea. Much better. Yeah, good.
Okay. Tom is asking about the V2G and V2H trials reducing the car battery life. Sorry, I should have let you ask it, Tom. Sorry. Tom, do you want to ask it?
Okay, well, you said it, I think. So, Paul, do you think the V2G or V2H is going to reduce your car battery's life, even with the limits that your controller is setting on?
That's a very good question.
Empty.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And at the start of the trial, Nissan weren't allowing their warranty. They weren't extending their warranty to cover this trial at the start. So we were making quite a gamble by putting, you know, a 30 to 40,000 pound car on the line. We might completely ruin the battery. But the trial, the people running the trial were quite sure of the technology, and they were kind of providing a warranty. Shortly after the trial started, Nissan came on board, they extended their warranty, and studies, I think in Japan, have shown that the regular cycling of a battery keeps it in better health than if it isn't regularly cycled. So with my car, because I'm doing a very minimal mileage, it would be in worse health because I'd be using it very little than by using it on the trial and regularly cycling the battery. And at the regular servicing periods, it's been serviced every year, and in the service they test the battery, and it's come out with glowing results each time that it's been serviced. So it's not showing any degradation to the battery. In fact, it's probably healthier than if I hadn't been on the trial, because I would use it very rarely.
Brilliant.
And another question on the battery, because you said it was such an early car and it's only got a 60-mile range, doesn't that mean it's a tiny battery and therefore it's not much use for all these trials? But obviously it is, so I don't understand.
Correct, good point. I was an early EV adopter. I got myself a BMW i3, but for this trial it was only possible to use the Nissan Leaf, because the cars need to be able to do bi-directional charging. And it's only the Nissans that had the what's called the CHAdeMO charger, which is bi-directional by design. The majority of cars have the CCS charger, which isn't bi-directional. So I had to swap my adorable BMW i3 and get a Nissan Leaf in order to be accepted on the trial. And that had, in the couple of years in between getting the car and the trial, battery technology had developed, and the new car had a 40 kilowatt hour battery, and almost, I think it was, yeah, pretty much double the range of the first car that I had. So, and yeah, a 40 kilowatt hour battery in a car, that's about 30 to 40,000 pounds, depending on the how new the car is and what level of trim you get. But if you tried to buy 30 to 40 kilowatt hours of home batteries, that would cost you a lot more than buying an EV, which it sounds absolutely crazy, but that's kind of how it is. And at the end of an EV's life, when the batteries are spent, they're actually still usable and are repurposed as home batteries, because the discharge rate that you need from a home battery is much lower than for an electric car. So they're being repurposed as home batteries. So yeah, very, it's such a kind of a growing industry, and everything's changing all the time. It's rather fantastic. But yeah, thank you for calling me out on the car. But yeah, I did have to change the car for the trial.
Okay.
I might step in here at this point. I mean, as Nicola said, I think, you know, Paul, Nicola, and myself, we're happy to stay on for, you know, more questions and a bit of chat afterwards if people want to stick around. But I'll make just a few concluding remarks so that people who want to leave can leave. So First of all, I really want to say thank you to Nicola for handling our Q&A, and also obviously to Paul for his wonderful tour. I'm just blown away by how thoughtfully you have gone about your retrofit, obviously with the kind of details around energy efficiency and all of the research that you've put in, particularly around the EV. But also about the approach to retrofitting for your health and your mum's health, and all of the research. It's been really interesting, and obviously you've been very thoughtful in how you've gone about that. So thank you for sharing that with us this evening.
Thank you.
Yes, and so I would also just like to give a quick plug for ways that you might be able to, or for you, the audience, might be able to help us after tonight's event. So I'm sure a lot of you already know that Open Eco Homes is a project of Cambridge Carbon Footprint, and we are a very local and a very small charity. So we'd really love your help. So first of all, just thank you to everyone who has already donated or purchased a ticket to come tonight. As a small charity, every donation really does make a difference in our ability to run events like this one. And if you haven't supported our work and would like to support our work, you can donate at cambridgecarbonfootprint.org/donate. And secondly, if you can, please do share Open Eco Homes. So word of mouth is incredibly powerful when it comes to getting people along to events. And we really, we would love to share Open Eco Homes and all of the tours that we have to as many people as possible. So if you can, please do share Open Eco Homes, tell people about your experiences. That would be great. And finally, it's not on this slide, but at the end of tonight's session, or when you log off, it will pop up with a short feedback form. We'd really love it if you could please fill that in. That really does help us with our work. And finally, I would really like to encourage you all to get started with your own plans, whether it's building an eco home or retrofitting a home. On this slide, there are some resources which will help you. And remember that these slides will be shared along with the chat, along with the case study, and along with the video from tonight's tour. So we will be sending out an email in the coming days, which will have links to all of those things. So they will hopefully help you on your journey. So that concludes the formal part of tonight's tour. Thank you again to Paul and Nicola, but please do feel free to stick around and ask any more questions, or let me throw back to Nicola. Are there more questions from the chat that you'd like to get started with?
I don't think so, actually. Not really. I hope you found it interesting.
Yeah.
And with relation to a question that was asked earlier about the bathroom door handle, the lock, I've just emailed through to Nicola the name of the company I purchased it from, so that will hopefully be up in the chat soon as well.
Oh, and someone wants a link to the shower head, and Anne said I've forgotten a question that she made. I'm sorry, Anne, can you ask it again? Oh yes.
Sorry. It was just saying, Paul, the vehicle to grid or vehicle to home, it just seems such a no-brainer. And do you I mean, if you're aware, do you know, is it going to become more widely available? Obviously the political situation at the moment with energy strategies and all is completely up in the air, but have you got any feelings to what's happening?
Well, the initial trial I was on, there were only 330 of us on the trial. The indications and the kind of reports coming back from there are that the trial was extremely successful. Since then, there has been another vehicle to grid trial started, and now there's this trial with vehicle to home, and there are indications that OVO may be starting a second vehicle to grid trial. Volkswagen have announced that all of their cars with the CCS chargers that aren't bi-directional normally, they're going to be putting in that bi-directional capability into their cars that are manufactured from this year onwards. And also the Hyundais and Kias that are coming out of Korea, or was that Taiwan? They're also with bidirectional capability to a certain extent. So it's something that it's very much in the infancy at the moment. All the indications are that it's technology that works and should be adopted. If we could, you know, if there were 10 million electric vehicles in the UK, and at any point in time there were 500,000 to 1 million of them attached to various chargers that may be public, may be private, that then creates a massive battery that the national grid can use. But with these trials, and this is a question I've always had with them, is because of the special charger that you need, there's always going to be an extra capital cost for enabling it. As we were going on to the trial, we were offered these chargers for a penny, basically. But if you wanted to set it up for yourself, then you've got to go out and buy a charger, and that's extra capital cost, which is where I think the difference between vehicle to grid and vehicle to house comes in. With vehicle to grid, I think it may be, because the national grid and the energy companies control it, I think they may end up paying for the chargers to be put in. With vehicle to home, where you control it yourself, that's when you're going to have to pay for the charger. And normal electric chargers will cost you about, you know, from about £750, but one of these chargers is going to be at least double that. And I believe for the vehicle to home trial, when it launches, they are going to be asked to pay a certain amount toward the installation of, well, the cost of the charger and the installation of it. The days of the complete freebies are over, unfortunately. But yeah, it's technology that works. It's got massive potential, and it could change very much. There's always a quote that, you know, if everybody had an electric vehicle, the national grid would melt. But this is showing that, you know, EVs aren't the problem. Well, as well as the problem that EVs bring, they can also bring the solution in providing the balancing power in their batteries. It's fantastic.
Thanks, Paul. We've got other questions. Louise, would you like to ask your question? Or question?
Sure. Yeah, if I could sneak two into one. I was really interested in a couple of the materials you mentioned. So mermaid board, which looks lovely in your videos. I haven't come across it before, but I wondered what it was and kind of what made you take the risk of trying a new material and whether that's paid off. And we're in a 60s house at the moment, which has lovely cork floors. And I know that's becoming a more popular material inside and out, but I think it does have its challenges perhaps as well. So I was just wondering how, you know, again, what made you choose it? You've said a bit about that, but, you know, whether that's paid off and whether you're happy with how it looks and how it works and how the fitting went.
The reasons for choosing both of those products is about the considered quality of living. In the bathroom, I wanted to make that as easy to clean as possible. So having lots of tiles with grouting and does make, you know, it's quite difficult to clean. If you can get a mop and just run it over a surface, then that just seemed to me a lot easier. The mermaid boards, they're available from pretty much all the plumbing merchants, and you can get them in a whole variety of colors, and they do look rather good. The one I've got in my bathroom is a concrete effect, which is a little bit kind of industrial, but when I get all the plants in there, it's going to soften it a lot. But yeah, the main idea was about making it easy to clean. And with with cork floors, we've got some old 70s cork flooring, which is just these kind of horrid orange tiles, but the quality of the cork flooring now has increased immensely. it's now available in the kind of click formats as tiles or as boards. And again, the idea is that having a softer floor, which is more forgiving if you fall, and it's warmer underfoot and softer. So again, those were the reasons behind choosing that, but also because it was the natural product. So I wanted to get away from having very hard, porcelain or stone tiles, which are very unforgiving. And currently, a lot of the house is carpeted, which is generally less clean, and it traps all the dirt. So not that I want to make the house squeaky clean, but
Yeah,
to kind of improve the environment and make it really that much easier to clean, and just making it better quality of living for us.
how do you think cork would withstand children and dogs?
I've got a dog, and she does like to scratch away at the carpet. And the cork tiles that I've had samples sent out, and they are certainly not. They're not a very, very soft surface. They are, they're pretty much spill proof, and they do have waterproof backing. So depending on the size of the dog, and how much they like to claw, that may influence your decision. My dog, I think, shouldn't be. She's quite a small dog, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue for us. Again, with children, it's giving you that softer surface. But yeah, they are more destructive, but it's certainly far more forgiving if a child, is running along and falls over. So yes, stone floors may be longer lasting. I think for the the quality and the comfort of living, I think they're a great choice. And again, you're not stuck with the orange 70s tiles anymore. You can get them in a whole range of colors and patterns, and they're really quite the variety.
Yeah.
Now.
I've got some samples. I'm keen to go and look at them over a bigger expanse, just so I can properly imagine. And did you put the cork on the outside of the house? Has that happened yet?
No, we're kind of heading towards that point. I guess you might be able to see behind me that it's all looking a bit like a building site, because that's what it is at the moment. We're hoping to get the external wall insulation up soon, because of the fact that we don't have any heating currently, and the weather changing.
Yeah.
But yeah, the cork, the exterior cork is it's not the same as for the cork flooring. It is a lot softer product, so that would be more kind of susceptible to children and dogs if they started pouring at that. But
Yeah.
I'm fingers crossed. I'm hoping it's going to work out.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Okay, thanks, Louise.
We have another question, I think. I'm not sure what it is yet, from Linda. Linda, would you like to say?
Hi, my name's Nick. My name's Nick. Computer's called Linda. Thanks very much, Paul. Enjoyed that very much. It's great fun. I've got a large area in my loft space which has got no insulation in whatsoever, and it's because the access space is about 1.5 foot. It's not enough for a person to crawl through with any equipment.
Yeah.
Could your spray loft insulation have been done by remote access? Do they just have a long tube that they could stick it through? And
well, it required somebody to go up into the loft in my case, but I have seen pictures where they've used the same type of product on floorboards, where they're applying it from underneath with a remote controlled type vehicle. So it may be possible that they can do that. I don't know the any restrictions or limitations to that, or whether the vehicle would fit through the 1 foot square hole roughly that you mentioned. But insulation is, it will save you so much on kind of electricity bills and make your house so much more comfortable. If it is possible to enlarge that entrance into the loft, builders are always very happy to destroy things, make holes bigger. So they may be able to kind of help out with that. Or yeah, there is a kind of a remote control vehicle that can use, but I'm not sure if it would be applicable, but it's certainly worth kind of looking into.
Yeah.
Is that Qbot, Paul? Because I know Qbot do remote vehicle spraying underfloor heating.
That's I think the picture that I've seen of a vehicle running around underneath floorboards. Yeah, but the remote vehicles are getting everywhere. We've got a drainage ditch which goes underground. It is piped next to our house, and they've been sending little robots down that to check it out. And yeah, the robots are taking over.
Thank you, Paul.
I think that might be it. We have no other questions. I think we're done. I was just going to have a quick look at the case study and see if it mentions where you got your floor insulation, your roof insulation from. No, it just says spray foam. Oh, hang on. No, you got it with the Green Homes grant, so I guess it was whoever they did it with. Yeah,
and it had to be very specific companies that had registered for installing the Green Homes stuff, and so you had a kind of restricted choice over the companies that you could use. And yeah, Green Homes grant was not very well run.
We've got something from Anne has suggested a blown cellulose fibre insulation. That's in the chat. Thank you, Anne. Or was that Tom? Tom and Anne anyway. And Alana's put a link to the Qbot thing. So there's some other possibilities for you.
Thank you.
I think that's probably it then. I think we'll let everybody go and have a cup of tea or something.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for your participation, for your wonderful questions, and for your information in the chat as well. I think tonight's been, I've really enjoyed it. I hope you have too.
And thank you all for putting up with me. Fun.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Paul.
It's been
Thanks,
really
everyone.
interesting. Thank you. Bye.